Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the COVID Longhaulers Podcast. We are a community of COVID long haulers who've been brought together by this illness and wanted to create this resource for other long haulers. We share the stories of folks who have been through it, who are going through it, and how they're surviving it. My name is Jessie, and I will be your host for this episode. Co-hosting with me today is Emerson. Hi, Emerson.
Hello. And our guest today is Matt. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself first? Tell us a little bit about who you are before we dive into your long COVID story.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Matt. I'm 35. I live in California. I was pretty average guy before all of this happened. I liked to play video games. I'm really into like tabletop and board games as well. I'm also a musician.
Oh, what do you play?
I don't know. I play guitar, bass, and drums. Well,
And
not so much anymore, obviously, because of my my condition. But
yeah,
I still try to play music here and there.
I assume you don't work anymore. So what kind of job did you have before all of this?
Before this, I was mainly in warehousing. I worked for a very large home improvement company. I worked in their warehousing division that handled all of their online orders for the western region of the US. So if you live on pretty much the western half of the US, and you ordered anything online from a home improvement website, I probably had a hand in getting it to your door.
For how long did you work in warehousing?
For about 12 years. Is pretty much
So,
almost right out of high school. In my area, there's just lots of warehouses everywhere. So a lot of
mhm.
people kind of move into those jobs since they are full time with benefits.
So you were doing this during the beginning of the pandemic when you were considered an essential worker. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah. So we were deemed essential workers. My facility that I worked at, we normally staffed about 300 to 400 employees. This is the capacity of the facility. And when the pandemic happened and everyone switched to online ordering, my company staffed our facility up to over 1,000 employees to keep
Oh,
up with the demand.
that's a lot of
That's great.
people in one.
Your
Yeah,
warehouse didn't magically grow overnight either, so it was,
exactly. The facility did not get any bigger, of course. So when they cram 1,000 employees into this facility that's designed to handle 300 to 400, you can imagine that it is extremely packed.
yeah. And at a time when you were supposed to avoid packed spaces and kind of isolate, were you told to follow any COVID precautions? Were any COVID precautions followed in that time at your workplace?
So the state of California mandated a lot of safety precautions, just like, most states and most countries in the world. Unfortunately, my company did not really enforce any of the mandated safety precautions. So because of all of the misinformation and propaganda that was all over the place, I would say probably about half of the workers did not care about any of the safety rules. So even though the company did say, yes, you need to wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, they put up signs, but they didn't enforce any of it. So
Hmm.
when people were listening to all this misinformation going around, they would come in to work sick. They weren't wearing masks. They were not following any of the precautions. And because of how many people were being packed into the building, it was very hard to follow those safety precautions anyways. It was extremely hard to stay 6 feet away. And like I said, a lot of people were just coming in sick because, in their minds, COVID was a hoax. It was no big deal. It
Hmm.
was blown out of proportion because they were being told as much by influential figures.
We don't even have vaccines yet. And then the leaders of your company aren't doing much to mitigate that risk for you as a worker.
No, not at all. And I would mention this to my leaders at work, HR representatives. I would report these things. I personally witnessed on many occasions managers, they would scan people's temperatures at the door, which was another requirement. And the temperature scanners, they would turn red if you have a temperature, they would scan my temperature, everything was fine. And I would come through the door and I would turn around and I'd watch. And I witnessed several times they'd scan somebody, the screen would turn red and beep, indicating that they had a temperature. And they would just wave the person on in, like, come on in to work.
Come in and infect everyone.
What I saw during this time was a lot of the people that were coming in sick were the type of people who refused to wear masks, refused to take COVID seriously at all. And managers would just wave them in. I would report this, and often I was met with ridicule. The managers and HR personnel would give me these weird looks, like I was some sort of crazy person. You know, they're like, why do you care? Like, why do you care if people are coming in sick?
Listeners, we have a content warning. The next 5 minutes discuss death of coworkers and their loved ones from COVID. Skip to minute 11 if you'd like to avoid this content.
You know, I would mention like, well, I mean, people are dying by the thousands every single day.
Yeah. So did some of these people die that you worked with?
Yeah, so I lost several coworkers. I remember my coworker David. He was in his late 30s. He had a wife and three boys, and I worked with him every single day. And I remember at one point, my coworkers and I kind of looked around and we were like, you know, where's David been? I haven't seen David in like 2 weeks. Like, not too long after that, they pulled us aside and they had told us that David had passed away in the hospital. He had gotten COVID
My
and had died.
goodness.
It seemed like for a little while there, it was almost every week they were pulling us to the side and letting us know that either a coworker had passed in the hospital or a coworker's family member had passed in the hospital. Another one of my close coworkers, she lost her husband. And I remember she understandably took a leave of absence from work and she didn't come back for an entire year. And
Wow.
I felt so awful for her. I remember one of my coworkers, he had come up to me once and he told me that when the pandemic first started and he saw all of the precautions that I was taking, initially he thought that it was overkill and he kind of would roll his eyes. And he told me that his best friend got COVID and passed away. And he apologized to me and said, you know, I'm sorry, I thought that of you. Like, this is serious. I just lost my best friend to this virus. I didn't think it was a big deal, but now I see
Yeah.
that it is.
That's so heartbreaking. Thank you for sharing this. I know
Yeah.
it's not necessarily easy to talk about, but it's an important point in time for us to witness what went on.
Yeah, of course. And I've said it several times before that, you know, it always felt like to me that many of us had different pandemics than other people. I was the only person in my family and friends that was an essential worker. Everyone else I know, they all worked at home. And some of my family also did not take COVID seriously at all. And it was very easy for them to not take COVID seriously because they're working safe and sound at home. The people that they look up to are all telling them that COVID is no big deal, that it's a hoax, and they did not experience what I experienced, what many of us experienced. I can't even imagine what healthcare workers went through.
Yeah.
But even for me, as just a warehouse worker, I saw a lot of death. The amount of people around me that were basically dropping like flies, there was no way to prepare for that. I guess when you decide to become a healthcare worker, you have to imagine that, you know, you're going to see some death at some point, and you kind of, I would assume that you try to prepare yourself for it. But I was not at all prepared for any of this. None of us were. It was a very scary time. It was very stressful. It was like a good year, I think, where it was like that during that first like year of the pandemic when everything was as bad as it was, and there were thousands of people dying every day. You know, meanwhile, I would go into work and this virus that, you know, I'm following on the news is that's killing thousands of people every single
And your
day.
coworkers.
And my
Yeah.
coworkers, you know,
Yeah.
meanwhile, I'm surrounded by it. I'm at work and there's people severely sick, coughing, no masks. They're not following any of the safety precautions. it was extremely scary and stressful. I do feel like I do have a bit of PTSD from that time. It's very difficult for me to go to stores and things like that and be around groups of people because I was, in the thick of it during that first year as an essential worker. I was crammed
Yeah.
in this warehouse full of people. And it's amazing to me that I dodged COVID as long as I did.
I have one more question about this before we get into your COVID infection. After you lost coworkers or coworkers lost family members, was there any change or did they continue not taking it seriously?
They continued not taking it seriously. It didn't seem like it mattered how many people died. They did not really seem to care. I never saw any change in enforcement. Half of the employees continued to come in sick, come in without masks, not follow any of the safety rules.
I want to briefly go back. You mentioned earlier that at work you were taking precautions that were deemed overkill. What kind of precautions were you taking to protect yourself?
Pretty much the only precautions that they had mandated. I was wearing a mask. I was sanitizing my hands constantly. I was wiping down my computer that I would use every day, all of the equipment that I would use, the forklifts that I would use. I was very meticulously cleaning every surface around me. Anything that I came into contact with, I was cleaning. I was staying away from the large crowds of people. And some of these crowds were very large since there was, like I said, over 1,000 workers. I was coming into work earlier and leaving work later.
Was that to avoid the rush of people?
Yes, exactly. I would come
Okay.
into work maybe 30, sometimes even 40 minutes early. And then after I clocked out, I would wait and leave maybe 45 minutes to an hour later so that the crowds would all clear out. I was taking breaks in areas of the warehouse that were not meant for taking breaks, just so I could avoid crowds of people.
I assume you probably got COVID at work.
Yes, exactly. So, despite my best efforts, I did eventually get infected at work. I'm honestly, like I said before, very shocked that I avoided COVID as long as I
Mm.
did. I didn't get COVID despite all of this. I didn't get COVID until December of 2021, almost 2 years later. And
Oh, wow.
unfortunately, the Omicron wave that infected so many of us, that was probably the worst wave as far as the amount of people infected. That finally got me. There was just no avoiding it. I remember
Yeah.
after the Thanksgiving holiday, everybody came into work sick. Everyone. I was one of very, very few people who was not sick after Thanksgiving. And if you guys remember right, this was around the time when vaccines had started to come out. In my state, the vaccines were staggered. You had to sign up on this website that would let you know when your turn was to get vaccinated,
Hmm.
and they were staggering it based on your job, your profession. Because of the stress of everything, I didn't follow closely when the vaccines were released for my profession, but unfortunately, I was not vaccinated at the time of my first infection.
How many COVID infections have you had in total now? It was the one in December 2021, and did you have any after that?
Yeah, so as far as I know, I've had COVID 3 total times. My condition started after that first infection in December of 2021. I remember when I got sick, I started feeling unwell. And that first day, it wasn't too bad. But I think the second day, it started to feel very, very bad. I remember feeling just the most extreme body aches I've ever felt in my life, particularly in my legs. I remember it felt as though the bones in my legs were going to explode or something. It was just extremely painful. It was like my body was on fire, and I don't know why, but it was just particularly my legs too were just very, very painful. And of course, I had the other typical illness symptoms: congestion in my nose, my chest, coughing. I did not, however, lose my sense of smell or taste. And
Huh.
I think that second day is when I took a COVID test and it came back positive.
Any difficulty breathing?
Yeah, I did have some difficulty breathing. It felt as though I had just ran for a little while and it was like trying to catch my breath. I had called the local hospital, let them know my symptoms. At the time, they had these systems in place where you could call the local hospital and talk to a doctor, within an hour or two or something like that. They told me to get a pulse oximeter. So I ordered one of those and my oxygen level, I think, was about like 92. But they had told me on the phone that unless my oxygen was like 90 or less, I couldn't come into the hospital because it was so full. The hospitals were so packed full of dying people.
Yeah.
So they told me if it drops below 90, then come to the hospital. But until then, just wait it out.
You didn't get any Paxlovid or anything prescribed?
I don't remember if Paxlovid was available in December 2021. It may
Oh, yeah.
have been.
Good point.
I'm not sure, but I don't think I
Yeah.
did get it that first infection.
I just Googled it. Paxlovid became available in December 2021. So you probably
Oh,
I
missed it by a
probably
couple
not.
days.
Did you feel some of your long haul symptoms at this time, like as well as the respiratory symptoms?
Yeah, so during that first infection, I think it was maybe about halfway through the infection, I got this very strange headache. It felt like just this real weird burning pressure in my head. It was only in the left half of my head. The right half felt normal. And it was just a headache unlike any that I had ever felt before. And I'm no stranger to headaches. I know what headaches feel like. I've had plenty throughout my life, just like most people. Any of the headaches I had ever gotten in my life, they didn't impact my life. It would last like maybe a day, if that, and would always respond to over-the-counter medications. But this new headache that I got was just very strange. All I can describe it as is a burning pressure. No matter what I took, it would not get rid of this headache. And I remember once I started feeling better from once I started recovering from the infection, I noticed the headache was still there. It wasn't going away. I guess at the time I figured, well, this is a new virus. I'm sure it will come with some symptoms that I'm unfamiliar with. I had never had COVID before. So I just chalked it up to that. And I figured the headache would go away eventually. So I recovered from my illness. I think the whole acute infection was probably 4 or 5 days or so.
Hmm.
And I remember the first day that I felt well enough to leave my bed, I got up and I went to my computer, as I had done almost every day for most of my life. As I said at the beginning of this, I was a huge gamer. So after I was feeling well enough, I couldn't wait to sit down on my computer and play some games. I noticed after a little while of using the computer, this headache was getting worse. It was flaring up. It was getting much more severe. The pressure was intensifying. The burning was intensifying, and I started to feel some confusion. And eventually, after I don't know 30, 40 minutes of this, I began to feel dizzy. I started having like speech and difficulty understanding things.
Hmm.
um, at the time I had no idea that the computer was causing this, so I was just trying to push through. And even though these were very very strange symptoms, and I think after close to an hour of playing games, it just became so intense that I could not continue. So I got up and I noticed I had some like balance problems. When my wife and I were looking up these symptoms, a lot of what we were seeing was stroke.
Hmm.
And I remember at the time there was some news about COVID causing blood clots and strokes and things like that. And I became terrified, that that's what was happening to me because these symptoms were very severe, very extreme. I mean, like I said, I was having trouble speaking. I couldn't form words. I had a weakness in my legs. So we immediately went to the
Wow.
hospital. From what I could tell, I might have been having a stroke. And
Hmm.
the hospitals were so full that they sat me in a wheelchair in the waiting room for about 3 or 4 hours. I think I was kind of in and out of consciousness at this point.
With a
Uh,
suspected stroke, where every
yes,
minute counts.
Yeah, so it was very scary. Eventually, a doctor did see me, and by that time, the symptoms had started to kind of resolve. They started to get better. So the doctor saw me, and they did the whole stroke workup. I think I got a CT scan. They have you follow their
Finger?
finger with your eyes, and they check if you have any limb weakness. They do all
Mhm.
kinds of like physical tests to determine if there might be a stroke. They didn't really see anything on the CT scan. So they ended up just discharging me. They prescribed me Tylenol and sent me home.
Gosh.
Mm.
Did they have any suspicion what it could be instead of a stroke? Because those are some pretty severe symptoms that don't just appear out of nowhere for no apparent reason.
I don't think so. They pretty much just chalked it up to my COVID infection, and they just sent me home. That was it.
I have very similar symptoms, or I've had very similar symptoms to what you're describing in my journey, and especially the burning. It's like a volcano. The moving burning in my head was so awful and so pronounced that like you couldn't even imagine that a CT scan wouldn't find something because you're like, there's something in there. There's something happening and nobody can find it. It's really disheartening.
I mean, to me, like it's so hard to explain. Most of the time, I explain it as a burning pressure, or maybe if there's
Hmm.
like some sort of corrosive acid that was poured into your
Yes.
brain. Like
Yes.
it is extremely unpleasant to say the least.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't always hurt. The pain can flare up and get very, very extreme, but a lot of the time it feels like a very intense pressure, like my head is going to just explode, almost like someone just took an air compressor and just inflated my head like as far as it would go. And then of course, like I
Yeah.
said, the burning comes and goes and can get very, very severe, to the point where I'm saying my goodbyes to my wife. the
Hmm.
the pain can get so intense that I start not thinking straight, and it becomes clear in my mind that like I may die today. This pain is the most intense pain I've ever felt in my life, and I'll start telling my wife like this is it.
Yeah, that feeling of I feel so ill and so awful that of course I'm dying. Like there's no other explanation. How can you feel this badly and live? And
Yeah.
most of us don't have that experience in our normal lives if we've lived in a country that, has stability and healthcare and what have you. At the same time that you're feeling this pain, at the same time you're having these debilitating symptoms where you can't speak, where you can't walk. There's all this research coming out saying, "Oh, COVID causes stroke. Oh, it causes heart attack." So you have that on top of your pain and you're like, oh, I'm literally going to die of a stroke. I'm literally going to die of a heart attack. And then you go to the emergency room and they're like, no, you're fine. And you're like, I am not fine. Nothing is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's extremely scary. It's been about a little over 3 years for me, and this burning pressure in my head has not gone away. I still have it right now as I speak. I have it every single day from the moment I open my eyes in the morning till when I finally fall asleep at night. It is there all of the time.
Hmm.
Some days are a little bit better than others, but it's always there. I noticed that I could no longer use computers. That flares it up real bad. So
Hmm.
I stay away from computers, which sucks because I've lost my passion for video games. I was a really huge gamer before all of this. That was my main hobby, and I've lost that. I've lost my job, my career that I had worked hard for. I had been promoted several times, and I was making decent money at the time of when all of this happened. And I was looking to transition into programming. That all fell through because obviously I can't use computers anymore. So I lost that prospect. And eventually, my employer at the time, they were accommodating me at first, like for maybe about a month they accommodated me. They were trying to have me do different things, but then they eventually decided to just make my life as hard as possible in hopes that I would quit.
Oh,
And they were right. Eventually, I had to quit. I had no other choice. I remember for many years, I had tried to get on a normal weekday schedule as part of my full-time shift. I was working weekend days, and I was missing out on a lot of life events. I was missing out on seeing my wife and seeing family. I had fought so hard to get a weekday schedule, and I finally did. And then 6 months later, the pandemic happened. Once I got these health problems, so after about a month of accommodation, they said, "Hey, so since you can't do your job anymore, we have to demote you to a different job, and you're going to be working weekends again. And you're also going to be working overnight on the weekend."
What?
So
So they
at that
create a
point,
situation that's unsafe for you to work, right? That you get COVID, you get long COVID. This is infuriating, Matt. Ugh.
exactly, it was very, very frustrating. And the position that they were going to demote me to was a very physically demanding job. Before this, I was mainly doing like systems work in the warehouse. I wasn't doing a lot of like physical labor. But this position they were going to demote me to was very, very, very physical, which I knew would also make my headache worse. So unfortunately, I had to quit. I had no other choice.
Can you talk a little bit about your other long COVID symptoms?
So I definitely have a lot of brain fog and cognitive issues, a lot of like focusing problems that I didn't really have before. It can be very difficult for me to focus on much TV shows. I noticed that I would have to constantly rewind like TV shows and movies because I would watch a whole scene and I just wouldn't know what I had watched. I was finding that I was asking my wife, like, what just happened? I can you explain this to me? And I had never had these issues before.
Yeah, we're all like nodding our heads, like, yep, we know what that's like.
Been there,
Yep,
still there.
every day of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have constant tinnitus,
Oh,
and my ears ring all the time. It started the same time as the headache. I definitely know that they're related. Usually, the tinnitus is worse on one side of my head. Usually, the side that the headache is worse on.
that's like exactly what I experienced. I had the left side of my head, and sometimes it would switch. But most of the time it was on my left, and I would get the ringing on my left, and wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and just to go back a little bit, as far as the headache goes, the first 2 years of my condition, my headache was only on the left side of my head. The right side felt totally normal, and this was for 2 years. And about a little over a year ago, the headache started to cross into the right side of my head.
Hmm.
So now today, 3 years since the start of this, I now have this burning pressure in both sides of my head. It also seems to be kind of evolving too. So I get new sensations that I didn't have before. Sometimes I'll feel this very strange, like cold, like sensation in my head. Sometimes I get this very severe stabbing in one of my temples. But as far as my other symptoms go, I also have some pretty severe gastrointestinal problems. This has made eating very difficult. It seems to also flare up my head. I think the two are very much
Yes.
linked together.
Yes.
When one flares up, like the other one will respond. Or
Hmm.
when I give in to my cravings and I'll eat something I shouldn't, it'll flare up my stomach, and then my head will flare up as well. I found very early on, like pretty much right after that first infection, that I could no longer tolerate many types of foods that I was tolerating without issue literally that day before I got sick. So I drank a
Yep.
lot of coffee, never had any issues with it. And then that first day after my infection that I started feeling better, I poured myself a cup of coffee, uh, like most people would do in the morning. And I immediately noticed it made my right side, kind of the liver gallbladder area, just started burning like crazy. And I found that a lot of different
Oh my
foods
God.
would flare this up, this right sided liver gallbladder area pain. pretty much like any sort of fatty foods, junk food, sugar, carbs, candy, soda, oily foods. I mean, the list can
For
go
me,
on
it's
and on and
every
on.
food. It's all food. I literally eat 5 things to be functional. Only 5. So it's very frustrating. And if people knew that this is what was waiting for them from long COVID, that you lose your job, your ability to play video games, your ability to look at a screen, your ability to watch TV and enjoy it, your ability to enjoy food, you, drinking coffee. Like this is a special hell. So you have the pain, and then you have what you have to do to manage the pain, and both of those are terrible.
I think
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I think a lot of people take for granted is just existing without any sort of discomfort. So most people, they wake up in the morning, they get up. I mean, maybe they're tired or they feel some type of way, but for the most part, people throughout the day, they're just doing their activities. Whereas most of us, we're living in constant pain or constant
Mhm.
discomfort all the time, no matter what it is we're doing, or,
There's
it
no
doesn't
day
matter.
off. You don't get a day
Everything.
off.
Exactly.
You need to prepare for everything. It's not fun to do anything fun because it afterwards you regret it because you're in pain for like a month afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, like most people here, I just want to feel normal again. I just
Yeah.
want my old life back. I want my normal life.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people out there that are downplaying this issue and are, some even are saying long COVID is a hoax. I don't know why anybody would make this up. I don't know why somebody would ruin their own life for no reason at all. If I could wake up in the morning and play games like I always did, that would be amazing. I wish I could do that. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you had a car accident after you became disabled from long COVID, right?
So this was maybe about a year and a half ago or so. Like I said before, my headache will flare up real bad certain days or some days. It's definitely very random. And this was back when I was still forcing myself to work because I still had these symptoms. It was still very severe. But what do you do when you're faced with like, okay, I have this condition now. I can't just quit my job. I still have bills to pay. I still have rent. I still have, all of these responsibilities. I can't just quit my job. So I was forcing myself to work, even though I knew it was making my condition worse. There was one morning where my head started flaring up, and it's definitely very random. And sometimes I don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So it started feeling a little weird that morning, but I had to be at work. So I got in my car, and I had never had any issues driving my car before. I mean, obviously, a headache does kind of make driving a little bit more difficult, but nowhere near as extreme as this event. And I started feeling dizzy. And before I knew it, there was an airbag in my face. In my mind, I don't really know what happened, but I crashed into a tree. It
Mm.
was in my apartment complex's parking lot. So nobody else was hurt. Just I seemed to not be hurt at all, other than,
Physically.
being hit in the face with an airbag. But in my
Yeah.
mind, I still don't really know what happened. I was driving fairly slowly down the road, and it has speed bumps, so you cannot drive very fast. But when you hit a tree is a very solid, sturdy object. So even when you hit a tree at a very slow speed, it can do a lot of damage to your car. Unfortunately, it totaled my car.
And add that
Um,
to the financial worries that are part of this illness. It's like, you have to work and then you total your car because you're trying to get to work.
yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me at that point was, what if this tree becomes another person? What if this tree becomes someone's child? I don't want to hurt anybody. So it became clear to me that driving was not a good idea at all. So unfortunately, I had to leave that job as well. Not too long after that, I had another episode, and my wife and I were on our way to see my parents. We had driven to their house, and I had gotten a very similar sensation like I had that time that day when I crashed the car. My wife was driving, of course, and I started to notice that I was having trouble reading the signs, like the street signs. And when we got to my parents' house, I walked into the door and I collapsed on my dad. My dad caught me, and it was a very similar episode. My left leg went weak. I was having speech problems. They were asking me questions and I couldn't understand what they were saying to me. My head had so much pressure in it. Once again, I thought I was having a stroke, and my family drove me to the hospital. In other countries, it may not cost very much to call an ambulance, but here in the US, it can be thousands of dollars to call an
Wow.
ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know when the ambulance might get there, so they immediately put me in the car and drove me right to the local hospital. And they admitted me for I was there for 8 days. They thought I might have had a stroke or maybe a TIA. But once again, they did the full stroke workup, and they said that they didn't think I had a major stroke, but they thought that it's possible I could have had a TIA, a mini stroke, basically. They had told me that sometimes TIAs don't leave traces, I guess. They just kind of happen and then they resolve, and then they don't really show up on like a CT scan or something like that. They still ended up doing an MRI, but I didn't get the MRI till like 2 or 3 days later, because I came into the hospital on a Saturday and their technicians weren't coming in until they don't do the MRIs until like Monday through Friday. So I
Because
waited.
nobody has strokes on the weekend.
Exactly. I thought that was insane, but they told me, yeah, there's nobody here to do MRIs right now, so you'll have to wait till Monday to get the MRI.
Oh my
So of course, by
God.
that time, they did the MRI, and obviously nothing showed up. So they said you might have had a TIA. We don't know. Based on your symptoms, it sounded like a TIA, but we can't really confirm or rule it out.
So, a quick question. With TIA, you mean the transient?
Ischemic attack. It's when maybe a smaller blood vessel becomes blocked temporarily and causes a disruption of blood flow to a section of your brain, usually a smaller section, rather than like a major stroke, which is like a much larger blood vessel that blocks a much larger section of your brain from getting blood. So at that point, my doctor put me on disability, like a temporary disability. And I don't know if it's the same in every state, but in my state, a doctor can issue you 1 year of disability. So he thought that hopefully in that year, they might be able to figure out what's going on. But no, not at all. In that year,
Yay.
they did not at all figure out what was going on. And my employer at the time, once that year of disability was up, they terminated me on the spot. They asked me if I was coming back to work, and I said, well, no, I still have this condition. I'm still, dealing with these very scary and severe symptoms. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to have to terminate you, which I
They're
guess I
allowed to
understood.
do that. They don't have
In the
any protection.
US of A.
So
Crazy times.
as far as I know, like they did everything that they were supposed to. Like they kept my job throughout this temporary year-long disability. But once that was up and the doctor could not excuse me from work anymore, it then became an attendance issue, and they could fire me for attendance, whether I had a health problem or not. Most of you guys know that it's very difficult to get any of this diagnosed.
Yeah.
So it's not even like I could show my employer, oh, I have this diagnosis. At that time, I didn't have any sort of diagnosis.
Did you get disability payments, or was it just like you were on sick leave and we weren't allowed to be fired in that time whilst you were unable to work?
Yeah, so I did get actual disability income. My doctor, filled out the paperwork for that, and I was able to get some of my income. I think it's like something like 50 or 60% of your income or something like that.
And that's a California thing?
I
It's
think
definitely not a federal thing. The
I guess
Yeah,
I'm
federal
moving
thing
back to
may not-
California now.
it may not be every state, but
Oh, definitely
yeah,
not the state. The state I'm in.
they
Nope.
can only give you a year of this, and once your year is done, the doctor can't. It doesn't matter how severe your health problem is, the doctor can't do anything at that point after the year. And then there's also FMLA, which I think FMLA is
That's federal, yeah.
But yeah, with FMLA, you don't get paid at all.
What is FMLA? I guess it's
Oh,
Family
Family
Medical
Medical.
Leave Act. Yeah, it allows you to be excused from work for a certain amount of time. You get like a bank of hours that you
okay.
can use, and you can use them all at once or you can use them intermittently. But to qualify for it, you have to have worked, I believe it's 1,200 hours in a rolling 12-month period. If you don't have that amount of hours in that period, then you don't get FMLA. You don't get excused
Oh,
from work. They can just let you go.
Yeah, it depends also on the company you work for. If it's a small company, you also aren't entitled to it if it's a certain size. So we see, at least in the US, we see people use FMLA for like parental leave because a
mhm.
lot of places don't have parental leave policies. Basically,
Yeah.
just a way to take care of yourself or your family and not get fired, but you don't get payment.
Crazy. I'm always interested to learn about these kinds of things because it's so different everywhere.
So since I ran out of that temporary disability, I haven't gone back to work. My wife is currently supporting the both of us. Luckily, she has gotten a promotion during this time that makes things a little bit easier, but it's still quite a struggle
Yeah.
to survive, especially here in California where costs are pretty high. Even though living here, we do have access to some things that other states don't, but it is very hard to survive out here in California on a single income. I've been out of work for about a year now.
Long COVID puts so much pressure on our family or the people we live with because not only do they have to make an income for us because we're not able to, but often they also have to kind of take care of us. They become our caretakers. I see it with my mom. She has to help me do basic tasks, take care of myself. She keeps me alive on a day-to-day basis. And then there's always this kind of financial pressure on them, this financial burden of all the medical bills that pile up and the medications you
Hmm.
need and the mobility aids and the therapies. And it's really, really tough on them as well to kind of have all this kind of burden put on them so suddenly without any kind of support from the government or from the decision makers. And also the lack of understanding in society, right? If
Hmm.
someone had cancer and they had to take care of their loved one, that would be okay, that would be understood. But because long COVID is this new condition that is often just considered to be mental illness, which is a valid condition as well, but a lot of people don't regard it as a real valid condition to have, then it just, it makes it even harder for them to reach out and get the help that they need.
Hmm.
I struggle with a lot of these things, and I agree with everything that you mentioned. I was raised in this environment that, always taught me to believe that a man takes care of his family, a man takes care of himself. It's been a struggle feeling like, and my wife is always telling me this isn't how it is, but it's like I feel like a leech. I feel like I'm bringing her down. I
Oh, I
feel
feel that so much.
I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like less of a man in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, that I can't work. I can't give my wife the life that I want to give her so bad. It's awful seeing, not just how this is affecting me, but how it's affecting my wife as well.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I want to make her as happy as I can. And at the moment I can't really do that.
Yeah, I can really empathize with that feeling of you started out a life with someone imagining what it would be like. And you're young. We're both young. And I also have a partner who I never wanted this for him. This isn't the life I would have chosen for myself, and it's not the life I would have chosen for him. It's really challenging. And I think also the flip side of that is that it doesn't have to be this hard, but because of the society we live in, it's hard. This is hard because of the choices of people in power to not take this seriously, to not provide social safety nets, to, et cetera, et cetera. So I try to remember that sometimes as like a remedy to be like, well, yeah, this isn't the life that I envisioned for myself or that I envisioned for him, and it breaks my heart that we have to deal with this. But also, it doesn't have to be this hard, and it's not our fault. And we're doing the best we can. But yeah, I'm so sorry for what you're experiencing. And then also, that added social pressure of being the provider role is no small thing, right? Like it just sucks all around and I'm sorry and I so appreciate that you're being so vulnerable about this and talking about it so honestly because it helps so much that others can see themselves in your story.
And it's funny because I never really saw myself as buying into these sort of societal expectations, of who we're supposed to be, but when I went through all of this and, as I'm going through all of this, I started to realize just how much these things that I never thought of as buying into anyways, I started seeing just how much it's affecting me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize these things would affect me in this way. Before I had health problems, I would just shrug all that stuff off, like, nah, that's not a thing, that's not real, And but it really is.
Hmm.
The way that
Yeah.
I was brought up, has had a big impact on how I feel now and these mental health issues that I deal with now.
Would you like to talk a little bit about the mental health issues that you struggle with since long COVID?
Sure. I mean, like most people going through a life destroying medical condition, I deal with a lot of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, a lot of stuff like that. It can get pretty bad.
Did you have any mental health struggles before you had long COVID?
No, not at all. I had a little bit of anxiety. Anxiety kind of runs in my family. I was a little more anxious than most of my peers, I think, but it wasn't crippling anxiety. Like as far as depression goes, not at all. None whatsoever.
And do you find that currently mental health struggles affect your health more, like your symptoms?
My flare-ups of my condition will definitely give me pretty bad bouts of depression and anxiety. Because I mean, I don't know what's happening to my brain, whatever is happening in my head that causes these symptoms. I don't know what it is. So, in my mind, all possibilities are on the table. I could be fine tomorrow. I could be dead tomorrow. I could be dead in a month. I could be dead in a year. I could be totally fine in 5 years. I don't know. Everything is on the table, and the uncertainty of that causes me a lot of anxiety and depression. And then it's kind of a vicious circle because I'll go through these bouts of severe anxiety and depression, and then that will make my head worse, and then that will make my depression and anxiety worse, and then that will make my,
Yeah.
it all feeds itself.
It's a horrible condition because mental illness or anxiety and depression is not the actual cause of your symptoms, but the symptoms are such a scary thing to experience, especially when you don't have an explanation. You don't know that you're actually going to be okay. And then to have, that anxiety and that stress and that depression worsen your symptoms even more. It's so hard to explain to medical professionals because they'll take that as an excuse to say, "Oh yeah, it's just depression," quote unquote. But
You can
actually,
get mini strokes from depression,
yeah,
apparently.
it's like how does depression, make my autonomic nervous system completely stop functioning for an entire
Yeah.
year? So like, yeah, so frustrating.
And it probably makes
Yeah,
it
that's
hard for you to like connect with others too. Like you're already isolated because of your physical symptoms. And then your physical then you pile on the depression, anxiety from the lack of help, the lack of support, the lack of relief day to day, how it wears you down. And you have to still exist in this world while people are posting pictures of like their vacation or they went did some physical awesome thing like they ran a marathon and you're like, I walked to the bathroom today. Moving on to our next question here. I think we touched on this a little bit, but just to clarify, any pre-existing conditions before long COVID? Anything that, you hear a lot about like, oh, you got long COVID because you had a pre-existing condition or whatever, like it's your own fault. But just curious if any of this stuff existed before COVID for you.
So I did have headaches prior to this. I was prone to headaches maybe a little bit more than the average person, but these headaches, they did not impact my life. They never lasted more than a day. They also felt completely totally different than this headache that I feel now. They are not even remotely similar. It is completely, totally different. And I guess that's the point that I have such a hard time explaining to my doctors, because a lot of the time they want to try to say, oh, well, you have a history of headaches, so it must be that. And it's like, well, no, this is completely different. It started from the first time I got that first COVID infection. It feels nothing alike at all. And I still get those same familiar headaches here and there. And I have both at the same time. I'll have the burning pressure at the same time as the normal headache, and the normal headache will respond to normal headache medications, and then the
Mm-hmm.
burning pressure just persists. It just keeps going. Some of my previous doctors in the last 3 years have been very stubborn in trying to treat this as though it's a new condition. They want to just say, oh, this is a migraine, here's some migraine treatments. I've been through every migraine treatment pretty much that there is, and none of it has any effect at all on this burning pressure in my head, which, common sense tells me that if you've tried all the treatments for a condition and none of it has even a small effect, that perhaps you don't have that condition, you have something else. Luckily, maybe about a year ago, I was able to get into a long COVID recovery program. Before anyone gets excited, they don't really know anything more than we know. In case anyone is in Southern California, they operate out of UC Irvine. Now, like I said, they don't really know anything more than most of us do here. What they can do, however, is hopefully get you the actual long COVID diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
in hopes that may help with applying for disability, which I'm currently in the process of now. They can also help you with getting prescriptions for things like low dose naltrexone. I tried that
Awesome.
myself. Unfortunately, that medication didn't do anything for me at all.
You mentioned a recovery program. Is this from the Recover study, like the bulk of money that the US provided to clinics? Like, is that the Recover that you're talking about?
So they're
Okay.
separate. Long COVID recovery program is separate from the Recover study, which I'm also part of the Recover study as well,
Okay.
um, which that operates out of Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. I actually just did my final appointment last week. The study was for 3 years, and I was in their Los Angeles branch. I was their first patient,
Ooh,
and
lucky
now
you.
they have hundreds. It was really awesome to be a part of that research program. I would go in, I think for the first year it was like every month, but then like subsequent years it was like every like 6 months or something like that. But mainly it was just doing these different tests, and they weren't testing to diagnose me. So it's a research program to try to see if they can figure out what these health problems are. So I was giving them a lot of samples. They were taking a lot of my blood, and I hope that the data that I was able to provide them and the samples I provided help them figure out what all of this is.
That's awesome that you participated in that. I know in our server, our Discord server, we had some people participating in the Paxlovid trial that's part of the Recover funding, which
Yeah.
has mixed results.
They did mention that they are going to start a Recover 2.0, I guess, which is another research program. They said that they would let me know more information about that when it becomes available.
So, did you see any helpful doctors with your long COVID, or was it all mostly kind of bad?
Some doctors have at best wanted to help, and at worst were extremely unhelpful. It's difficult because none of them really know much of anything about these conditions. So at best they can do the scans and the tests, and it's unfortunate that most of us are testing normal across the board. So even when a doctor wants to help us, there's not a whole lot they can do because they don't know what to do. They look at our tests and our scans and everything's fine, everything's normal. So I've had some good doctors that really wanted to help. I currently have some decent doctors that are trying some different things, mainly for my gastrointestinal problems. But unfortunately, as far as the headache goes, I haven't found a neurologist that really wants to think outside of the box. Mostly they're just kind of running me through migraine treatments. And I guess like in a way I understand, because it's like they don't know what this is. They're just trying to treat me based on my symptoms at this point. I wish that they would do more tests to try to figure out what this is, more complex testing. I'm sure that there are other things that they could be doing, other tests, but of course there's the insurance issue and navigating all of that. If they don't have a justified reason for something, or if they can't justify it well enough, then an insurance company is going to deny it. So that's also an issue. Some of the doctors have been very bad too. I've been yelled at, I've been laughed at. I've had times where I left that doctor's appointment and I broke down in tears in the car
Man.
immediately and cried hard
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
how they made me feel. And you also have to remember, we're reaching out to these doctors for help. They're our last resort. I mean, before
We're
I had all of
desperate.
these health
Yeah.
before I had all these health problems, my understanding was that if you were to develop any sort of health problem, you just go to the doctor and they will figure it out for you. That's what they're
Mm-hmm.
there for. That's their job, to do this. I had a very naive idea of what our healthcare industry was, and
Mm-hmm.
I found out the hard way.
It's so sad that it's such a uniting experience among us long haulers that our doctor's appointments are all this kind of stressful, horrifying thing that we have to go through in the hopes of maybe getting a good medication or maybe getting a test that will actually prove something. I think most of us have had doctors who gaslit us or been yelled at. And when you tell this to someone who isn't chronically ill, they're like, I can't imagine that a doctor would yell at you.
You finally see like what it's like to live on the marginalized side of
Yeah.
the healthcare. Disabled people have experienced this forever, and we never really experienced it. Now we're seeing it.
I think that's what stood out to me the most through all of this is I started to realize, like, this is what people have been dealing with for decades. I mean, before all of this happened to me, I was the most average guy you could ever meet, nothing wrong with them. Now that the curtain has been lifted and I'm seeing this industry and society for what it really is, it's so eye-opening. And I guess it's like, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that's super cliche to say. You hear that cliche all the time, but that phrase has so much meaning to me now.
I think what annoys me the most, like with healthcare providers who don't take us seriously, is that most of us, we don't have the energy to do a lot of Google searching. And for example, now in preparation for this episode, Jesse and I did a very quick Google search of like long COVID headache, and we came across some studies that had some very basic information. Any neurologist, any primary care practitioner, anyone could go on Google and search this for like 5 seconds. And for example, a study showed that 52% of the participants in the study who had experienced headaches during their acute phase of COVID continued to have persistent headaches after the acute phase. That's data that like any neurologist should take seriously, and yet they don't. They don't look it up. They don't have this kind of data in front of them. And if when you present it to them, they kind of treat you like you think you're better than them, or they're like, oh, you have a WebMD. And I'm like, yeah, but
I'm desperate. Of course I looked this up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys can find all of this after a 5-second Google search, why is it that these doctors can't? And why
yeah,
is it, to your point, when you bring this up, why is it that we're treated like hypochondriacs? Like,
yeah,
whenever you start a sentence with like, I found this article online, or I found this research online, immediately the doctor like rolls their eyes, like, and it's like, why are you doing that? In a way, I kind of understand it, because I know that doctors are under immense pressure. They're forced to crank through tons of patients a day. They're not given the proper time and resources that they need to really care for patients. So I do
Mm-hmm.
understand it in a way, but what that tells me though is doctors should be listening to us, because we're the ones that have all the time in the world to do all of this research, and this condition has become our whole lives. Whereas a doctor, they're not going home and researching my condition. They're not spending any more time than they did in that 5-minute appointment on my condition. So I feel like it should be a partnership.
Yeah, and there's another study that we found in preparation for this, that the new daily persistent headache, NDPH,
Yes.
that is like an increasingly reported problem moving forward as a neurological like sequelae of COVID. So this is like something that we know that is being reported to practitioners. And I have gone to practitioners. I've gone to so many specialists in the last several years, and nearly all of them have said, "Oh, yeah, that problem gets worse after COVID. Oh, yeah, we've been seeing more of this after COVID. Oh, yeah, that too." That's it. That's where it ends. Like if you're an ear, nose, and throat doctor and you see that more people are losing their hearing from COVID infections, you think that you would choose to protect yourself by wearing a respirator, by advocating for good health practices among people who are at risk. But you see this across the board of minimization.
Is there anything that you figured out yourself? What helps you manage your symptoms and keep them at bay or make them not flare as much as they maybe would?
Yeah, so one of the things that helps with my headache a little bit is I freeze these bags of ice. The cold somehow like helps a little bit with the headache. It takes a little bit of the edge off. It's not like a treatment. It's not curing me or making my headache any better, but it takes the edge off. It's really more of a distraction than anything. But I'll lay on that on a block of ice, and I have like three of them in my freezer at all times. And as far as the gastrointestinal issues go, just limiting my diet. I was eating a very, very simple diet. I ate like nothing but chicken soup and dry toast for like an entire year, like nothing else. Like breakfast, lunch, and dinner was
Man,
just chicken soup and dry toast for a whole year. Lately, my doctor put me on like the max dose of omeprazole, and that has helped because I was getting a very extreme amount of acid reflux. And that has helped me a little bit. I can expand my diet a little bit better. I drink a lot of coconut water. I find that that like helps keep me very hydrated.
electrolytes
Um,
and that coconut water. Yeah, that's a big one for long
yeah,
COVID people.
I've become a huge coconut water fan, and I used to hate coconut water. I
You
thought it was
crave it
gross.
now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of it now.
So when you're talking about the ice, it reminds me of like some of the experience I've had with my headache problems. And the ice is a big one for me. I usually would put it at the base of my neck. But in one of the studies we saw about this new daily persistent headache after COVID, they talk about one of the potential mechanisms for this, the reasons this happens is this inflammatory response and immune dysregulation. And okay, the ice helps with the inflammatory response, right? And for me, like ice helped, and then also medical cannabis helped. Not a lot of other stuff helped, but the immune dysregulation part is, I think, related to the GI stuff you talked about, which is what I've been experiencing as well, because we have so much immune activity in our gut. That seems to be like the trigger for a lot of the worsening sort of headache events. My theory is a lot of this originates in the gut, and that's why doing things like the omeprazole or Pepcid, famotidine helps a lot. Another one that I've tried recently that, if there's any listeners out there with a similar problem, is L-glutamine powder because COVID messes up your mucosal barrier in your stomach. And so that causes a lot of GI distress. So it's just interesting that like you have discovered on your own a lot of things that I've discovered on my own that a lot of others have discovered on their own. The doctors aren't following this, but at least we are kind of sharing these stories with each other, which I think is really, really impactful.
Yeah, I'll have to give some of that a try as well.
We'll put a link in the show notes for sure, but like there's lots of different things to help your gut with COVID. Gut
Yeah.
dysbiosis is so complicated. It seems like the inflammatory response is continuous, and that's why the ice helps, right? And I think that's where the tinnitus happens. For me, I get like a really full ear too, like something happens in my face.
Yeah.
So we know that inflammation is a problem in long COVID, and then we just don't know how to deal with it because it's so intense all the time.
I definitely think the intestinal issues are linked to these head issues. I've found the same myself. They seem to feed each other and they seem to react to each other. Both of my conditions started at the same time, the constant headache and the
Yeah.
gastrointestinal issues. In my mind, there's no way that they are not related to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like the whole like gut brain axis that is poorly researched, but there's more and more research going
Mm,
into it.
yes.
And the vagus nerve, for example, that's also goes like from your brain right down to your gut. Your gut microbiome can influence things like tinnitus or also cause depression. Apparently, if you have a poor gut microbiome, that can apparently lead to more
Yes.
depression. So it makes sense that, right, when you eat something that you don't tolerate, especially if it's something highly inflammatory like alcohol or sugar or all that kind of stuff, that it would make, your headache worse simply because it's inflammatory. But also if your body struggles to digest it, then the entire gut brain axis chaos.
That's just such a great point because there's been studies of long COVID in mice. I'm going to link the study in the show notes, and I hope I'm not going to butcher this, but taking the gut microbiota from a person with long COVID and putting it in a mouse, and then the mouse showed long COVID symptoms. So the mouse was fine. You put our particular weird, messed up gut microbiome into the mouse, and it suddenly has all these long COVID symptoms. Like that is wild. So I'm really excited about a lot of this research coming out.
I wanted to go back to your experience, Matt, and your long COVID symptoms. We spoke about how everything kind of got really, really bad after your initial infection in 2021. And I wanted to ask how you're feeling today. Have your symptoms, have they improved in any way? Have they gotten worse?
Yeah, I unfortunately I have not gotten any better.
Sorry.
I have been getting slowly worse over the last 3 years. I've tried so many different treatments for migraines, headache treatments, nerve pain treatments, all sorts of other random treatments that I am forgetting. And unfortunately, none of it has had any effect. And I'm getting slowly worse. As I mentioned before, the first 2 years of this condition, the burning pressure in my head was isolated to the left side of my head. And then a year ago, it moved into the right side. And then the last several months, I'm getting this new stabbing sensation in my temple. This condition is definitely progressing, at least my condition specifically. It's not just like a stagnant condition. It's something that is getting worse and progressing over time, which is very scary to me as well.
Yeah.
I look back at how my condition was at the beginning of this on day one, and man, I wish I could go back to that because
It was
considering
so
what
much
my
easier.
condition
Yeah.
is now, that was nothing compared to what I deal with now.
Yeah.
Uh, I wish I could go back to when it was more mild like that. But the scary part of that is when I start thinking about, okay, that was 3 years ago when things were not as bad as they are today. How will it feel 3 years from now? What about 3 years from then? You know,
Yeah.
I have no, I have no reason to believe that this will not continue to progress.
Hmm.
So it's a very scary thought, wondering what my life will look like in 3 years or in 10 years, because I see people in these NDPH support groups that, they say their headache has been going for 25 years. And I'm like, it just, my jaw drops. I cannot fathom
A
dealing with this
life.
for 25 years or
Yeah.
Hmm.
longer, or it's been 3 years for me.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I don't personally have that kind of headache, so I can't really relate to that. But with being bedbound most of the time with my fatigue is you're not really living, you're not experiencing anything anymore. You're just existing, you're surviving every day. And you do find joy in the little moments, and try to enjoy them as much as possible. But at the end of the day, it's not the life you envision for yourself, and you do grieve and mourn the person you used to be, the life you used to have, the life you envisioned for yourself, the future you thought you would have, and it's incredibly painful to have to lose that. We've talked about so much now, and this is our last question for you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the long COVID community?
Just keep going. I know it's difficult. I know just as well as anyone how difficult this is. I read this this quote. It kind of made me laugh, but also it resonated with me as well. It said, if you can't keep going out of hope, then keep going out of spite. That's kind of
Uh,
what I'm going on now is
I'm gonna
just out of
tattoo that
spite.
on my forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a burden, you know.
Be a thorn in their side.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
a thorn in their side, you know. That's mostly what I would say is to just keep going, you know. We have a, like you guys mentioned, we have a great community. There's a lot of us suffering. Hundreds of millions globally
Mhm.
are suffering, and you're not alone. I know it can feel very isolating, and I know a lot of the time it's like, how come I don't know anyone else with this? I don't, none of my friends, none of my family have any of this. Why am I the only one? You know, but there are hundreds of millions suffering across the world. And keep in mind, a lot of the time, people are not attributing things to COVID. So I've met plenty of people in my life where, you know, I'll talk about my health issues and they'll say, like, oh yeah, you know, I got COVID and I had this condition, or it made my asthma worse. I've had this ever since. I've had a
Yeah.
weird cough ever
Yeah.
since. And then I'll look at them and I'll tell them, like, you realize you have long COVID, right? Like that would count as long COVID. And they just give
Yeah.
me this weird look.
Because they're
But
not disabled from it. It's like they don't make the connection.
it just really goes to show that when you think to yourself, I'm the only one going through this, I don't know anyone else, it's more likely that people you do know have some sort of issue. It's just they're not really talking about it, or they're
Yeah.
not attributing
Yeah.
it to their COVID infection.
I've realized is when I started talking openly about my health with some friends I know in real life, was that all of a sudden they were like telling me about their weird health issues that they had after COVID infections. And I was just sitting there and I was like, should I be the person to, break the news and tell you maybe you have long COVID, maybe you should be taking this virus more seriously so you don't end up like me. It's so interesting how people just get COVID, have weird symptoms afterwards, and then don't make the connection that that's the cause. I think a lot of it kind of belongs with the bad media coverage and how people think that long COVID is just severe fatigue because that's the way it's framed, right? A lot of people think long COVID is ME/CFS, is chronic fatigue, when in reality, it's over 200 different symptoms that people can have. It's a complex chronic condition.
Yeah, can we just get rid of the term fatigue? That is the worst term. This is so much more than fatigue.
It doesn't sound great to people who aren't experiencing it. When someone else hears chronic fatigue syndrome, they think to themselves, oh well, you know, I'm tired after work too.
Yeah.
You know, they don't realize what it really is, you know,
Yeah.
because these
Yeah.
names, even the term long COVID itself, I've never been a huge fan of. I feel like I've met a lot of people where I'll mention long COVID to them and they'll be like, oh yeah, I had long COVID before. It took me like 3 weeks to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah, they think it's just a lingering cough. Well, that's
Yeah.
partially, I think, because the way it's been
Yeah.
talked about.
I
They're like,
think
oh, long COVID is like, oh, it's just something that lasts a little longer. And it's like, well, hold on. I didn't have these symptoms during my acute
yeah, it's a
infection.
new thing. It
Right.
suddenly
These are
pops up.
totally new things that popped up later. And now there's the definition of long COVID is anything that could be like popping up in the 2 years after your infection. So if
Yeah.
it takes 6 months for this autonomic dysfunction to show up, that doesn't mean that it wasn't from a COVID
Yeah.
infection.
Here in Switzerland, long COVID is called post-COVID syndrome. So they kind of call it basically is every symptom post-COVID infection that pops up and lasts for longer than 3 months. So anyone who has lingering symptoms for 3 months and then recovers, they don't even get the diagnosis because a lot of people have weird symptoms after their COVID infection, right? It's very common, but 90% of them recover within the first 3 to 4 months. So they
Mhm.
don't get the diagnosis. They don't actually have long COVID or post COVID, as we call it here, which is very interesting.
I
Yeah.
prefer that term myself, post-COVID syndrome or
Hmm.
post-COVID conditions. It tends to get a better response from people when I use those terms. Because usually when I say long COVID, there's some incorrect assumptions that come with that term. People think that
They're still
it's a
infectious.
COVID infection that lasts a long
Yeah.
time, when that's not really the
Yeah.
case.
post-infection illness is really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Whether it's a virus or whether we know like Lyme is one of those other ones that people are treated really poorly if they have chronic Lyme because the medical system doesn't recognize it. And Lyme is a bacteria. I feel like we could talk for hours because y'all, we got a great
Yeah.
vibe, but I'm going to do the outro now. Thank you, Matt, for joining us on our podcast and sharing your experiences. We hope all you listeners found it engaging. As a reminder, while our discussions offer medical related insights, this is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare team with any of your medical concerns. For our listeners interested in joining our Discord community, you can find the link in the description to connect with us. We aim to release episodes every other month or so, recognizing that each person's experience with long COVID is unique. While today's discussion may resonate with some, we acknowledge the diversity of stories yet to be shared that will touch on completely different symptoms and subjects. So please subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes. Until next time, this is the COVID Longhaulers Podcast signing off. See you on the next one.